Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Summer Marr, and I'm the public educator with Largo Fire Rescue. And we're so excited to have you here today for our virtual hurricane preparedness event. We have a great lineup of panelists here to help you better prepare for a potential storm. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is going to be recorded. It is live recording right now, and we will be able to have it posted on our website, largo.com/emergency, for later viewing. Questions are encouraged throughout the webinar today. If you are on Facebook, you can simply ask your questions in the comment box, or if you are on the GoToWebinar app, you can simply look for the question mark icon and ask your question right there in that chat box. If we run out of time at the end, so we're going to have our Q&A session at the end. If we run out of time and we don't get to all of your questions, we will have a frequently asked questions section posted also on largo.com/emergency. And then lastly, if you are using the GoToWebinar app on your cell phone, something that you might have to do is either swipe left or right in order to see all of the panelists speaking and be able to see the presentation slides. It just depends on the size of your phone. So if you can't see slides, but you can see someone speaking, just swipe to the left or right, and then you should be able to see the slides. All right, I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today. We really do have a great lineup of speakers. Today we have Chief Cody Johnson, Division Chief of Emergency Management with Largo Fire Rescue. We have Chief Meteorologist from ABC Action News, Denis Phillips. We have yours truly, Summer Marr, Public Educator with Largo Fire Rescue. We have Mecca Surfestini, the Emergency Management Coordinator with Pinellas County Emergency Management. Jessica McCracken, the Whole Community Specialist with Pinellas County Emergency Management. Officer Vu Tran from Largo Police Department. Tony Salvareza, General Manager of Regional Services with Duke Energy. And Anna Marie Millett, the Investigator and Outreach Coordinator for Pinellas County Consumer Services. So a lot of great information we're going to be able to share with you today. I also want to give a very special thank you and shout out to our City of Largo staff from the Communications and Engagement and Community Outreach team. They have done so much to help us in the background of all of this, working behind the scenes, and they're going to be assisting us with question facilitation. So thank you, Eileen Carey, Katie Bishop, Brandon Graham, Preston Jarvis, and Julianne Perez. All right, and without further ado, I will now turn it over to our Division Chief of Emergency Management, Chief Cody Johnson.
Thank you, Summer. I appreciate it. My name is Cody Johnson. I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Largo and the Division Chief of Emergency Management for Largo Fire Rescue. I would like to thank those logged on today and our panel of speakers. You know, as everybody knows, we're in uncharted territory right now. We're dealing with COVID-19, preparing for hurricane season simultaneously. This is something that no one else has ever dealt with. However, we as a city and you, our residents, must be prepared. We cannot let our guard down. Largo has taken a different approach to emergency management. You know, emergency management is no longer just a police and fire responding to a disaster. Largo utilizes an approach to what we have coined as a citywide approach. Our entire city is involved, from environmental services to our library staff, to accounting, to IT, and what an unbelievable job they do for us. And our employees have worked very hard to prepare our city and will continue to do so. You know, today we have some very intelligent speakers on our panel who will be providing you with a wealth of information. Everything from knowing your zone to generators to shelters and just to having an overall plan. You know, everything starts with a plan. Combine your plan with the accurate weather forecast from Denis Phillips, and you'll be well on your way to being prepared. Largo is committed to you, our residents, and we will do our part. I can promise you that. And I leave you with this: the more prepared you are, the easier it will be to recover. And thank you, Summer. Summer's put in a lot of hard work to get this up and running. And thank you, Summer. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Chief. And now we will have Denis Phillips, Chief Meteorologist from ABC Action News.
Thanks, Summer. How you guys doing, everybody? Very interesting times we're obviously in our hurricane preparedness. In the past, we've gone through seminars, we've gone through expos, we've done it face to face, and now in what we're dealing with now, hopefully this information gets out to people who need it. If you don't know me, I haven't shaven for a couple of weeks. I've been on vacation preparing for expectations that I won't have many days off over the next couple of months. I go back today, and luckily the tropics remain quiet. And as we mentioned, I am Denis Phillips, ABC Action News Chief Meteorologist. Been here since 1994. So I'm curious for the number of folks who have maybe been here a little bit longer, a little bit less, if you've actually been through a big storm here in the Bay Area. Charlie, back in 2004, that was really our storm. That was the storm that a lot of folks in the Bay Area actually evacuated to Orlando and ended up being right in the middle of it, because in our area, we luckily for our area, unfortunately for Punta Gorda, we had that turn that many of us remember oh so well if you lived here in that time, and turned down to our south, because at that point in time, 6 hours prior, the Hurricane Center pretty much had us right in the bullseye of a Category 4 hurricane. So that was really, at least in my time, the Bay Area's best exposure and highest probability of seeing a major hurricane. Now remember, and this is something if you're new to the area, maybe you don't realize this, it's been almost 100 years since the Bay Area has been hit by a major hurricane, 1921. So it isn't something that happens very often, as we knock on wood, hoping that continues for a while. But obviously the thing that I think folks in emergency management try to get across is you have to be prepared each and every day. And it's a little bit tricky this year because obviously a lot of folks are curious, well, what happens if I evacuate? Do I go to a place where they may require social distancing? Will there be as many spots there as there have been in previous years? It's a really great question. And I'll be honest with you, many of those answers are still yet to come. There are plans. I've done a lot of these seminars with the city of Tampa, with Hillsborough County, with different areas, and there is a plan. But the biggest question is going to be, how effective is that plan going to be depending on how many people decide to evacuate? So my lesson here, the one that we try to get across, is it is really important for you to know, and I'm sure the speakers here will let you know on this for the Largo area and all of Pinellas County, and for that matter, all of the Bay Area, is at what point do I stay home and ride it out? And at what point do I evacuate? Now, there's an old adage in meteorology and in terms of hurricane preparedness: you hide from the wind, you run from the water. And that is really the key, maybe this year more than ever before. If it's a situation where you're not required to evacuate because you're not in a flood zone, maybe that will be a situation where you have to consider, would I be better off staying home than going to a shelter? These are one of these important questions that you need to know in advance. You know, back in 2012, we had Hurricane Isaac coming. A lot of you folks may remember that. And the RNC, the Republican National Convention, was here in Tampa. Well, everybody was freaking out because we had a hurricane coming as the RNC was here. And I literally sat down in about 5 minutes and just jotted down some rules, things that I thought would be helpful for folks maybe to decide whether or not they evacuate, not to freak out with a storm that might be enough offshore that we're not going to have a problem with. And one of those came up literally the 7th rule that I came up just happened to be rule number 7: don't freak out unless I'm freaking out. We're fine. And that is kind of taking off a life of its own in a lot of ways in terms of my viewers and my followers. But honestly, it's the message that I think all of us need to remember. And that is, how in the world are you going to make an educated decision to help your family, to keep your family safe, if you're freaking out? I mean, we all know as the storm gets closer, and boy, Irma was a perfect example of that 2 years ago, that as a storm gets closer, sometimes the track can shift east to west. And the thing about Florida, especially a storm that's coming in from the south, it doesn't take much if it's down around Cuba. Just a little bit of a shift down to our south is a much bigger shift, an East Coast storm. But if it goes a little bit, we're talking 1 or 2 degrees in the other direction, it's a West Coast storm. And that's what made Irma so challenging, because it didn't come in from the east or the west. And here's a rule of thumb: if we get a hurricane coming in from the East Coast, you're rarely going to have to worry too much about water. I mean, you never say never. If it would go out in the Gulf and redevelop, maybe you might have some issues. But typically, the rule of thumb is if we get a storm coming in from the East Coast, we have a more of a wind issue. And then if we have one coming in from the West Coast, that is our worst case scenario. That is our biggest concern. And with Irma, we couldn't figure out one way or the other if it was going to go east or west, because it was coming in from so far to the south, and that little bit of a change made a big difference in our forecast. But I know all of us remember. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. We don't have a ton of time, but this was a Thursday night, Friday morning, as the track was still on the east coast of Florida. And we were all waiting for the computer updates. I'm sure pretty much every single person in this group was keeping an eye on what computer runs were changing. The European model, which is typically, you hear a lot of folks talk about the Euro. The Euro is traditionally the most accurate model out there, at least overall. Now, in a given time, it may not be. But usually, and especially with Irma, the Hurricane Center was going with that Euro pretty much model run to model run. Well, about 2 a.m. comes along, and I'm sitting at my computer like I am now, and I see the Euro go from the East Coast to the West Coast. Now, the new hurricane advisory doesn't come out until 5 a.m. And everybody who's going to bed, and not a lot of us were back then, we were kind of living from model run to model run, we're waiting to see what would happen. Well, when that went from East Coast to a West Coast storm, it got real, and for our area. And 20 seconds after I saw that run, I got a message, a Facebook message from a buddy of mine, Paul Delgado, over at Channel 13. And his response was just, oh my God, because we both saw what that model was going to do. But then there's the big question. The new Hurricane Center run did not come out or update didn't come for another 3 hours. So do you go on and tell in social media, and combined, him and I both have about 750,000 followers, do you go on and tell people that the Hurricane Center will very likely change the track to our area, or do you wait for them to make that update? And after a discussion, him and I both decided, you know what, we're going to go ahead and release this, because it might give people a little bit more of an opportunity to leave. And I will tell you, that's exactly what my family did. They were staying put, but when that model changed to the West Coast, 2 a.m., everybody got up, and the closest hotel they could get was Atlanta. So obviously, I think we all remember that. But if I could get any messages out here right now, and we can briefly talk about what the expectations are this season, but it is this year, you may have already had a plan. You may be well prepared. You may have thought, well, I've done this for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. I know what I'm doing. This year, with the limitations on evacuations, especially in terms of shelters, it could really change the way things go. So make sure this year of all years that you really know where and what you're going to do. I mean, I think everybody gets the idea of generators and gets the idea of batteries and water and whatnot. If you lived in the Bay Area long enough, it's second nature to you. But this year, in terms of staying or leaving, it's a really, especially in terms of a shelter, it's a very different situation. Quickly, long-range hurricane predictions, we all have heard it, and I think there's a lot of validity to the fact that there's going to be a lot of storms out there this year. We've already had through the F storm. We've already had through Faye, right? But who cares if they're all in the middle of the ocean? I really think long-range hurricane predictions sometimes can be a disservice, because what happens over a period of time, if you have 3 or 4 or 5 years of above normal activity, and you hear the media and you hear everybody saying it's going to be an active season, but at your house, if you don't get anything, eventually you're going to think people are crying wolf. Oh, they're just trying to scare us. So my take, honestly, is it does not matter how many storms form. And the prediction is 14 to 18, maybe up to 20. And we'll probably have that many named storms. But does that mean they'll impact Florida? Of course not. There's no statistical number that says that in our Bay Area directly, the odds of us being hit are significantly higher because there happens to be 16 to 20 named storms out there. You could maybe argue the entire East Coast or the Gulf Coast combined might have a little bit higher risk, but in our area, we've not seen that. But it does tell us that with an active season, you would think there's going to be more storms out there, and typically those storms are August, September, and early October. The first couple of months of the season usually are not a big impact in terms of the Atlantic hurricane season. Sometimes the Gulf, but they're usually weaker. But usually from mid-August to early October is our prime time. And I'll leave you with this, is the last major hurricane to hit the Bay Area was in the middle of October back in 1921. So honestly, very often it's later in the season that we have to worry about it because it's more of a Caribbean or a Gulf situation. Remember, our worst case scenario is a storm that comes in from the Caribbean, splits Cuba and the Yucatan, goes north. They usually want to go to the Panhandle. Storms will go north. They naturally are drawn to the poles. So what happens to turn a storm to Florida? It would be something that would kick it east. What's that? A cold front. Well, how many cold fronts do we get in August or early September? Not too many. So they want to go north. But as you get later in the season, September or October, then you're more likely to have something maybe kick back toward the west side of Florida. It doesn't happen often. It's been 100 years. Let's hope it stays that way. But at this point in time, remember, this year of all years, know your zones, know your evacuation areas, know whether a shelter is good for you or your family, whether they allow pets. And throughout all of this, we will get there together. There's a ton of information out there. Stick to your expert, your trusted source, whoever that may be, and go with them. Because I think we've all seen on social media the misinformation that can be there sometimes. So if you keep it with us, we've got you covered. Thanks for stopping by, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dennis. That was very helpful information. We really appreciate you being here with us today. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you all now about some of those things that Dennis did just mention, but some of the really important first steps for you when it comes to hurricane preparedness, right? You want to know your evacuation zone. You want to know what your evacuation options are, and you want to make sure that you have those preparedness kits ready. So I do have a poll question here for those who are on GoToWebinar. You can answer the question via the poll. If you are viewing on Facebook, you are welcome to answer in the comments section. My question for you is, do you know your hurricane evacuation zone? How many of you actually know what zone you are in? The zones go from A, B, C, D, and E. And I'll share these results here in just a minute. Do you know your zone? All right, the answers are looking promising. I'll give it just another minute here. Everybody's answering. Okay. So this looks pretty promising. We have 85% said that yes, they do know their evacuation zone, and then 15% said no, they do not. But that's okay for those of you who don't know your zone yet. We will definitely get that taken care of for you, and we'll help you figure out how you can find out what your zone is. Let me just get back on here to share my screen. Okay, so you want to be able to know what your evacuation zone is, know what your evacuation options are, and being able to build your preparedness kit. Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't able to change my slide here. There we go. Okay, now we're back in business. So your evacuation zone is based on that storm surge, which is those high winds that's going to bring that water onto shore. Your evacuation zone depends on your proximity to water, and it depends on your elevation. So you can see here a map of Pinellas County, and it shows the different colors of what our different zones are. The zones start with A, and that's going to be if our storm surge has a potential to reach up to 11 feet of water, then they would start to evacuate zone A and all manufactured home communities who are also considered in zone A. Then the higher those winds are determined to be, the more evacuation zones the county will determine to evacuate. So it doesn't mean with every storm that every evacuation zone is going to be evacuated. It all depends on the storm. Some things to keep in mind. Zone A is going to be the one that evacuates first in the event of an evacuation order. Residents that are in manufactured home communities are considered zone A. And the reason why that is, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're close to water or that you're going to get affected by the storm surge, but it does mean that those winds are high enough that they could cause severe damage to the mobile home. So a very important message out to everyone living in the manufactured home communities that if zone A is asked to evacuate, we ask that you please evacuate as well, which means it's very important to know where you're going to go. Each storm is different, so it's important to stay informed and stay connected so you know where to evacuate and if your evacuation zone is asked to be evacuated. And lastly, your flood zone is different than your evacuation zone. So there's a website, and Jess will talk about it a little bit later, on where you can go to look up what your flood zone is, because that's more based on the rains, whereas the storm surge is based off of those high winds and those waters that come up on land. So your flood zone is different. So now let's talk briefly about what your evacuation options are. Let's say you're in evacuation zone A, or you're in a manufactured home community, and you know if we have a significant storm, you are going to have to evacuate. You do have some options. Option number one would be to stay with a friend or a family member in a non-evacuation zone. Another option that you have is to be able to stay in a hotel in a non-evacuation zone. And the reason why I emphasize non-evacuation zone is because whenever we had Hurricane Irma, we did have a few residents share their stories of how they went to evacuate to a hotel, but it was an evacuation zone B, and we actually ended up evacuating zone B. So they had to leave the hotel, and then they were scrambling to try to figure out what their other options were. So check to see if your hotel is in a non-evacuation zone. Your last resort option, option 3, it is there if you need it, is to stay in a public shelter. Now remember, a shelter is a life raft. It's not a cruise ship. It's not going to be comfortable. It's not the Ritz-Carlton. Okay, it's going to be tight spaces, and you really only want to pack just your essentials and really think about what other options you have before having to go to a public shelter. If you can stay home because your evacuation zone has not been ordered to leave, then you can stay home if that's your choice. You'll be more comfortable at home. If you have a friend or a family member that you're able to stay with instead of going to a public shelter, we really just want to stress we want to make sure you understand and have that expectation that these shelters are not the most comfortable place to be in. It is there for survival, and we will let you in with open arms, but if you have other options, please consider those. But shelters are an option if you need it. There are 3 types of shelters. I won't go too into them because Mecca's going to take care of that for us, but we have general shelters, pet-friendly shelters, and special needs shelters. So after talking about our evacuation options, I wanted to ask one more question to you all. If I have to evacuate, where do you plan to go? If you're in zone A or you have to leave, where are you going to go evacuate? Are you going to stay with a friend or a family member in a non-evacuation zone? Are you going to stay in a hotel in a non-evacuation zone? Do you plan to stay in a public shelter, or go to a galaxy far, far away from here, out of town? Are you planning to travel out of state, out of town? You don't even want to be here during the storm. I'll give you all just a few minutes to answer those questions. And remember, if you're on Facebook, you are welcome to answer the questions in the comment section as well. We would love to hear what your plan is, and I'll share these results. Now remember, when you're thinking about evacuating, you want to think tens of miles, not necessarily hundreds of miles. So if you are thinking about traveling out of state and really getting far away from the storm in Florida, you want to make sure you evacuate way ahead of time. Even when you first start to see that storm out there in the cone, you want to travel right then and there, because the roads will get very crowded because a lot of other people are going to want to travel as well. Okay, I'll go ahead and share these results here. So 45% said they'll stay with a friend or family member in a non-evacuation zone. That's great. And 29 said a hotel. Some will stay in a public shelter, and a good bit of you said you want to just get out of here, go to a galaxy far away. And in the time that we're in, just remember that we all want to maintain our social distancing as we get to these shelters or stay with a friend or a family member. Things look a little bit different right now, but we always want to keep those things in mind if we do have to evacuate, and keep that safety in mind as well. All right. Give me just one moment here, and I will get back onto my presentation. Okay, so we talked about our options. We learned a little bit about what your options would be. I wanted to share with you a way that you can look up your evacuation zone if you don't know. There are a couple different options. You can look on your utility bill and it'll tell you what your evacuation zone is. You can call Pinellas County Emergency Management and they will let you know what your evacuation zone is. You can also go to www.pinellascounty.org/knowyourzone. And these are a few screenshots from the Know Your Zone program. Now I will tell you, you want to look up your zone now while we don't have a storm. During Irma, everyone in Pinellas County decided that they needed to know what their evacuation zone was. And the website, it had so many people on there trying to find their zone that it was a lot slower than normal because it was being overloaded. So look at your zone now so you know. This picture here, it shows where I typed in the location. I just typed in Fairway Village. That's a local manufactured home community here. And once you type in your address or your location, it'll tell you. The location is in evacuation zone mobile home. So they know that they will have to evacuate. If you look at the bottom here, it tells you several types of accommodations of hotels that you can go to evacuate. However, make sure that you click on the actual hotel so it will tell you what evacuation zone that hotel is in. See here it says evacuation zone X. That means that it is in a non-evacuation zone. So all of the hotels listed, they still might be in a zone, so you have to check and make sure. It also tells you the list of shelters, special needs shelters. Know Your Zone is a great resource. So a little homework for you. If you don't know your zone, go ahead and look that up on this website here, or give Pinellas County a call, or you can always call us here at Largo Fire Rescue. I'd be happy to help you find what your evacuation zone is. All right, building your evacuation kits or your stay kits. Whether you stay or you go, what is in your survival kit? It's going to look a little bit different depending on where you go. I have a list here. If you can go online and look at the Pinellas County Emergency Management Hurricane Guide, that's going to give you lists on whether you're going to a shelter or whether you're sheltering in place. A couple key points: medications and copies of your prescriptions, non-perishable foods, water. You want to think 1 gallon per person per day. Bedding for a small space. When you go to the shelter, you want to just have a twin size air mattress. A lot of people sometimes just bring lawn chairs because it's a very tight space. Clothing, personal hygiene items. Right now, we want to make sure we bring our face coverings wherever we're evacuating to. Your important papers, a valid ID, a phone list, cash, a manual can opener. I have a couple items here I'll show you real quickly. If you're sheltering in place and you have your non-perishables, don't forget your manual can opener. Your weather radio is very important if you want to get that up-to-date information regarding tornadoes or anything important that's going to be happening during that storm, battery operated. Hand sanitizer, something important to bring with you. When the power goes out, it gets hot, so have a battery operated fan. You want to have your cash on hand. And lighting. If the power goes out, you're going to need battery operated flashlights or lanterns. Don't use candles. On the fire safety side of things, don't use candles. It's just better, unless they're battery operated, it's just better to use battery operated flashlights or items like that, because the last thing that we want you to have is a structure fire in the middle of a hurricane. So let's stay fire safe as well, and always make sure you have working smoke alarms in your home. So again, I know this is a lot of information for what to bring and what to pack in your kits. If you go to pinellascounty.org/emergency, you can find a hurricane guide, and it has a long list, and it's also on their website. Just make sure you pack now. Buy a few items each time you go to the grocery store. So if a storm is approaching, you're not trying to go to the store and get everything at the same time as everyone else is. So be prepared now with your items in your kit. And lastly, staying informed. There are lots of different ways that you can find out about emergency information. One is Alert Pinellas. If you go to largo.com/alertpinellas or the Pinellas County website, It's a notification system that will send you text messages, phone calls, and emails to let you know of any type of important information regarding a storm. It'll tell you which zones have to evacuate and much more. Stay close to your social media pages, your city and municipality social media pages, that is. We'll be pushing out all the important information that you need to know regarding the storm. Ready Pinellas is a great application that you can put on your phone. That is also a great way to download the hurricane guide, look at the shelter options, and it has great info for storm preparedness. The city and county websites, your municipality's websites, they'll be posting information on the storm as well. Your local news channels, and of course, especially during the storm, that weather radio. So lots of different ways that you can stay informed. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mecca now, and she is going to go a little bit deeper into the shelter options that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Summer. Hi, everybody. My name is Mecca Surfacini. I am the Health and Human Services Program Lead for Pinellas County Emergency Management, which puts me in charge of shelter planning. In Pinellas County, we have 3 different types of shelters. We have special needs shelters, general population shelters, and pet-friendly shelters. The special needs shelters are there to accommodate our residents that have functional and access needs. They have generators to support our electric dependent residents. So if you're electric dependent, we always encourage you to evacuate to a special needs shelter if you don't already have a generator at your home. And that way your medical machinery can still work if the power goes out. We do have limited supplies at these shelters. We provide cots and some equipment is available, but we do not have enough for everybody. So we ask that if you are going to come, you bring a blow up mattress or a cot to guarantee that you do have somewhere to rest. Now, these shelters, what makes them really different from the other 2 types is that they are actually staffed by the Department of Health. As opposed to being staffed by just the Pinellas County school staff, who staffs our general population and our pet friendly. Now at the general population shelters, we don't have any of the backup generators. We do not have any cots or special accommodations. As Summer said, it is really a life raft, not a cruise ship. They are staffed by our school personnel, that's our teachers, our principals. They all pull together to staff those shelters for our residents. Now, 3 of our general population shelters are deemed pet-friendly shelters. You can find out which ones are going to be opened as pet-friendly from our website, pinellascounty.org/emergency management. But the difference is that they are staffed by Pinellas County Schools as well as Animal Services. Now, you do care for your pet in these shelters. What you do is the pets don't get to stay with you at your bed because there is the possibility that even though someone has a dog, they may be allergic to cats. So we have to consider all of that for all of our residents. So all of the pets are kept actually in the gym locker rooms, which is staffed 24 hours a day by Animal Services. You are in charge of cleaning up after your pet, feeding your pet, administering any medications. What Animal Services does is they clean all the common areas. So when you come to get your pet to walk them out, to take them out to use the bathroom, they clean that walkway to make sure that it doesn't have 10 dogs walking across it before it's bleached. They also monitor who comes in and out with pets. So you sign your pet into them, and the same person has to sign that pet out. And that ensures that no one walks away with someone else's pet. We sheltered hundreds of pets during Irma, and it went very smooth, very well. Can you next slide for me, please? So the special needs shelters, we do ask that you register for these ahead of time. You do not have to register if you're only seeking shelter, but we do encourage you to, because that helps us plan for staffing levels and equipment needs. One way to register is online. You can go to pinellascounty.org/special needs and print the PDF, fill it out, then print it and mail it to our office. Our office address is at the bottom of the form. If you don't have a computer or you don't have access to a printer, you can call our office anytime at 727-464-3800 and leave your name, address, and phone number, and I will mail you a form and with instructions of how to mail it back to me. Reasons that you would want to register for special needs or to go to a special needs shelter is if you're electric dependent on medical machinery. And I know there's electric dependent, a lot of people get confused on this. This doesn't mean your cell phone. It means, you know, if you're on an oxygen concentrator, if you require a scooter in order to be mobile and that needs to be plugged in, that's an electric dependency. So basically any kind of electric dependency that has to do with medical or health care, we would consider a special need. If you require minimum medical or functional assistance, so if you need assistance, say that you have an aide coming into your home, but you generally live alone and can, you know, you just get minimal help, then the DOH, Department of Health staff, is at the shelter to assist with that. Now, if you register and we determine that your needs are higher than our Department of Health staff would be capable of helping with, we will help you make arrangements at a local hospital to take shelter. So if you feel your needs exceed the program, we encourage you to go ahead and sign up anyway, and we will help you find those accommodations. Now in Pinellas County, we're a little different where we actually consider transportation a special need. Now, if you live, you know, if you're a able-bodied young adult and you live 3 blocks from a PSTA bus stop, we expect that you'll be able to get yourself to a shelter. All PSTA becomes free during a ordered evacuation, and they do make stops at the special needs as well as the general population shelters. And they do allow you to transport your pets to a shelter at that time as well. But if you are, you know, elderly and you don't necessarily have any functional or medical needs, but you do live pretty far from a bus stop and it would be tough for you to, you know, we don't expect a 85-year-old to pull their suitcase a half a mile to the bus stop. We would consider you a special need and we want you to sign up for the program to get that transportation assistance. Now, once you've registered, the forms come to my office here at Emergency Management, and we enter them into a database where every fire district in this county has access to that database where they can access the registrants in their cities, in their jurisdictions. They then determine what kind, if you're asking for transportation, what kind of transportation asset is going to be most appropriate based on your needs. So we ask that you fill out the form as thorough as possible because these determinations, you know, are better done beforehand rather than during an evacuation. So you would either be picked up by a bus, which is provided to us by our schools. They give our school buses to our fire districts who take them around and pick up the people in their jurisdiction, or an ambulance, in which case Sunstar Ambulance Service would come pick you up. We do not charge for this service. This is free to our residents or any visitor that happens to be here during the time of an evacuation. Now, for special needs residents with pets, it's important to know that a service animal can go anywhere. You know, ADA, the American Disabilities Act says that you can take them anywhere you'd like, but a service animal is very different from a pet. So again, having to think of people with allergies and, you know, some pets get stressed and they could bite someone. We do not allow pets to stay in the special needs shelter with you. What we do for these is when you bring your pet with you to the shelter, and we have animal services, Pinellas County Animal Services staff on hand there at the shelter who will receive your pet from you. They will then take that pet to their location here on Ulmerton Road and care for your pet until the end of the evacuation period. They will then return that pet to you when it's time to go home. We ran this plan during Irma for hundreds of pets and we had no problems. All the pets were healthy and cared for and returned to their people, to the right people. Now, if you are going to have to go to a hospital for your shelter because your needs exceed that, or you need an ambulance transport, we don't put pets on ambulances. So what we do is we have to have you register ahead of time, because this is a partnership between Sunstar and Animal Services, where they will need to show up at your house together. So the Animal Services can take your pet before you go to the hospital for sheltering. But they still care for your pet for you during the entire sheltering process, and will return that pet to your home when you return home. Next slide, please. So I have been working very hard for months now, figuring out what does sheltering look like during a pandemic. So I've made several changes to the sheltering program during this COVID environment. So normally a general population shelter would give 20 square feet per person that shows up to take shelter there. If you can imagine, this isn't very much space, and with social distancing, it is not safe. So what we've done is I have taken every room in every shelter and I've actually divided it by 60 square feet. And what that allows you is 36 square feet of personal space, and then a small buffer before you get to the next personal space. Not every person will get 60 square feet though. The amount of spaces your household gets is determined by the size of your household, because we recognize that a family doesn't need to social distance from each other, from themselves. They just need to social distance from the next household. So we've come up with this plan where you will be assigned a number of spaces depending on the size of your household, and that gives you sufficient space to shelter yourselves and distance from the next household. Now, another difference we're doing this year that we didn't do in the past is when you when you show up for the shelter, you will be assigned a room. So before, when you came to a shelter, you were registered in and you were just let loose on campus to go find a place to hunker down. In order to maintain control of the social distancing safe space, everyone will be assigned a room to take space in. We will not be separating families, so you will be assigned to the same room with everyone in the household that you showed up with. You will be given a wristband that has that room number on it, and it will be color coded. And that helps for any disputes. If a resident is having trouble with another resident who is encroaching on their space, we can verify that they are even supposed to be in that room. We do have a mask requirement this year. We are putting away some masks to help those that show up without one, but we encourage you to bring your own mask and your own hand sanitizer. Even though we will have them available, you know, there's a lot of people in this county, so we do encourage that you put those in your evacuation kit this year. Back to the wristbands. So the reason we're going to have those color coded is for meal times. So in any of our shelters, we do provide 3 meals a day to anyone taking shelter in a special needs general pop or pet friendly shelter. But we're not going to have everyone sitting in the cafeteria. We feel that that is not good social distancing. So everyone will get their meal, and instead of it being a buffet style, you will be given basically a to-go container with your meal in it, and you will take it back to your shelter location, your bed area to eat. But we don't want everyone, you know, running to the cafeteria at one time. So we will actually be calling by color of wristband. And that helps to spread everyone out. It allows you to keep 6 feet of space between you as you're approaching to get your food. And we would do one color right after the other in no particular order until everyone has their meal and is back at their space. And that is all I've prepared. So I really appreciate you having me today, and thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Mecca. That's some great information regarding the shelters. All right, up next we have Jess McCracken, the whole community educator from Pinellas County Emergency Management. Jess, I think you are on mute.
We good?
There we go.
There we go. Okay. So whether you know it or not, the speakers before have actually given you a really good first part of your hurricane preparedness plan. Keeping yourself and your family safe is the most important thing. And knowing your exposure, knowing what your options are and where you can go, and making the plan to do that and evacuate and get your family and yourself safe is a really good base to starting your hurricane preparedness plan. So the second part, or another part of the hurricane preparedness plan, is preparing your property. And before the storm, you really want to look at taking the things from your lawn and bringing them inside. So anything in a high wind event that is not secured to the ground will become a missile. And you don't want to cause additional damage to your home or your neighbor's home or cars. So bringing in all of those lawn ornaments, bird baths, and bringing them all the way inside your house to secure them from not going flying when we have high winds will really cut down on the damage to your home and the homes around you. You want to turn all the utilities off at the base, your water, your electric, and your gas. Lock all your windows and doors. You may get back to your home after other people in the community, and you want to make sure that if and when your home survives, that all of your valuables and all of your personal belongings are safe. And again, anything that can become windborne, you want to bring it all the way inside. So I saw with Irma, people taking things from their lawn and putting it up against the house. And that really doesn't do anything except get that item closer to your home. So make sure to bring it all the way inside. And of course, a plan is not worth anything if nobody knows about it. So once you've made your evacuation plans, go ahead and let your friends and relatives know where you're planning to go and what your plans are. Go ahead. So No Known Left Behind is a fun campaign that we've launched in emergency management. And basically we were going around to the mobile home parks and reminding the residents, especially our seasonal residents, to bring all of your lawn ornaments inside. As you can see here, this is a Nomeo. And you can imagine that these items would be really dangerous in a high wind event. Go ahead. So when you're preparing your property, it's important to remember the ABCs: anchor, brace, cover, and strap. And you can change it somewhere. So when we're talking about anchoring, you're wanting to, again, bring anything inside that can become windborne. Consider lightweight mulch, shredded mulch versus a rock or gravel landscape. And you want to trim down those trees and the foliage to prevent any loose branches or any decayed branches from snapping and breaking as soon as that wind hits and becoming windborne. Now you can talk to an installer about giving you some recommendations if you've got a shed, something that you can't actually pick up, especially a shed that has a lot of heavy equipment in it. You don't want those things to become windborne. That can be very, very dangerous. So talk to an installer about recommended methods to getting those structures or your carports, things like that, how to get those secured to the ground. Go ahead. Now, when we're talking about bracing, this is reinforcing your garage tracks, your door tracks. You want to make sure you're bolting all of your doors with foot and head bolts. So typically you want to use a minimum of a 1-inch bolt in length. And again, working with a licensed, bonded, and insured contractor to make sure that the work is permitted and done properly. And you can go ahead. Just another thing on that. If you are a homeowner, you've probably heard of a wind mitigation inspection, and that basically, it inspects your roof. It also qualifies you for discounts on your insurance, but it's an inspection for your roof that inspects the roof to wall connections, the wall to ground foundation connections, the wind resistance of your roof and your windows. And a lot of insurance companies require that you have that. So you probably already have that done. So you want to maybe pull that inspection out or ask your insurance agent for it to take a look at what you're working with. And maybe a couple $100s can give you upgrades on that. And really, it will make a difference when we are in a wind event. So when we're talking about covering, the best option is your impact resistant laminated windows and door systems, if that's something that you're able to do. If not, you want to cover all your large windows and doors with approved impact resistant shutters, especially patio doors. You have sliding glass doors that are coming into the home. You really want to make sure that those are covered and secured. You want to make sure all your windows and doors are properly caulked. That will stop any water intrusion from getting in the house, or at least lessen the damage from that. And install a roof covering that's rated for high wind and impact. Now, roof can be very expensive, but you may be able to do some replacements on the roof that could stop loose shingles from flying off and ultimately stopping the water from intruding in there. Go ahead. And when we talk about straps, again, tying down any freestanding fixtures in your yard, so your sheds, your carports. In mobile home parks, the number one cause of damage is these carports getting ripped off because the wind actually has the ability to get under there. So you see that these straps have been installed to secure that roof to the ground. Go ahead. And these are just some fun facts here at the bottom about planting trees, rooting, what trees survive best. But you want to remember that once you go through and get all those decayed and old tree branches cut down, you want to dispose of those piles of limbs, because that will be a huge missile that's going to be going flying once we hit a wind event. Bring in all large items from your yard. And in advance, again, cutting down those decayed old tree branches that have the ability to snap and will cause damage to your home. We got to remember to not drain our pools. This is a myth, a common misperception. What you want to do is you want to super chlorinate the water, maybe even some anti-algae or something, because you will have contamination from items coming into the pool. You don't want to drain your pool. It will or could cause your pool to lift or ultimately pop out of the ground, and you definitely don't want that. Go ahead. Now we're talking about association ground preparation for our condos, homeowners, or resident-owned communities or mobile home parks. You want to know the association's responsibility. You want to know on the bylaws, in your bylaws, you have a list of things that the association is responsible for versus what the homeowner is responsible for. Never expect that something is going to get done. So we want to know who's responsible for what, and then go ahead and create an action item checklist. What's going to be done, what needs to be done, when does it need to be done, who's going to do it, how you're going to get it done, and how you're going to document that it was done, and then practice. Again, a plan is only as good as who knows about it and how many times you've actually practiced doing these things. So, for example, you may say on the 5-day cone, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. So you know you're putting your plan in place, and believe it or not, that can go into your hurricane preparedness plan. And if you're an association, you want to share that with your residents, post it. I've experienced some associations that actually have their residents sign off that they've read the emergency plan. That way, there are no expectations. You don't want the residents of your association, if you're a board member, you don't want these residents dependent on things that are not going to be available. If your clubhouse is going to be closed, which a lot of them are because of the liability issues, you don't want somebody not evacuating and then trying to get in there and not having access to safety. Next slide, please. Now, association property can consist of anything in the common areas, but again, those are spelled out in your bylaws, and it's very important that you know what those things are. These are things like your central office building, your clubhouse, the office inside, your underground utility lines, and the pedestals. Typically, the pedestals are owned by the mobile home park owner, if we're talking about an ROC or a mobile home park, but they are maintained by the association. So it's very important to know who's going to take care of that. Make that plan before. Roads and walkways, fences and signage, association-owned vehicles, washers and dryers in your laundry rooms, and then homes on the property that are owned by the association or the resident-owned community. you need to make sure that you are taking care of those just like the homeowners on your property, because we definitely don't want one of those mobile home parks coming loose or the roof ripping off and damaging the homes around it. Next slide, Summer. So we've gone through, and Summer and Mecca did a great job about informing you how to protect yourself and your family, because people are number one, of course, safety. We've gone through how to protect your property and therefore protecting your contents or your assets if you're looking at it from a business perspective. But when we're talking about a business, we want to really think about one more step before we go into creating that plan. Go ahead, Summer. So there's an extra line of defense when you're talking about preparation, and that is preparing your insurance. So in my previous life, I came from the dark side, the insurance world, and I worked with condo associations all along the beaches here, and seeing them prepare and what the difference was in the aftermath from those associations that had planned versus those that didn't have a plan, it was mind-blowing. So I really always tried to push that. So there are very easy things that you can remember and very simple things that you can do in blue skies is sit down and talk to your insurance professional. They know the options, they know the carriers, they know what you have available to you. But until you know the first thing, which is what is my exposure, you're not going to be able to make those decisions later on in the process. So exposure is what elements, what hazards, what perils your building is more susceptible to. Then you can go into what are my options with that. There may be some tweaks that you can do on the policy that would be very small in premium, but a huge payoff in the aftermath. And then understanding your coverage and knowing how it's going to respond in a disaster situation. Go ahead, Summer. Sorry. So when we're talking about exposure, one exposure that's very big here in the state of Florida is flooding. Florida's surrounded by water on three sides, so any area can flood. You always hear high risk, low risk. They're also called standard or preferred flood zones. And like Summer said, flood zone is not the same thing as an evacuation zone. Flood is rising or seeping waters, and it's a completely different thing. You can find it at your flood risk, your pinellascounty.org /flooding. You'll put your address in there and it will give you your flood zone. But again, any area in the county can flood. You may be in a low risk flood zone, but people in low risk flood zones account for 20% of flood claims filed with the National Flood Insurance Program, and also account for 1/3 of disaster relief funding through NFIP. So as you can see, you still have the ability, there's still the possibility that your home could flood. So it's very important that you look into this. This could be one of the things that you talk to your insurance agent about as an option. Low risk flood policies are very inexpensive, less than $500 a year for $200,000 in building coverage, which can make a huge difference when you have a flood event. And again, for safety, you want to stay away from floodwaters, turn around, don't drown. Next slide, please. Now, when we're talking about options, one thing we need to look at is first, know what your deductibles are. This is something that typically you choose on the policy, but you have an all other peril deductible and a hurricane deductible. Now, your hurricane deductible is going to take effect when there is a named hurricane. Other than that, everything that's covered in your policy is covered by your all other peril deductible. And I will give you an example. I had a client in Indian Rocks when Tropical Storm Hermine came on the grid. Their building was insured for $5 million. Their all other peril deductible was $5,000. Typically, it's a flat deductible. versus your hurricane deductible, which is a percentage of your building value. So the damage was done to their association by Tropical Storm Hermine. Now, fast forward to Hermine coming up around the Panhandle, and then it was upgraded and declared a hurricane. And at that time, all insurance policies are now subject to the hurricane deductible. They had a 5% hurricane deductible, so you can imagine the frustration of this association when their damage was now subject to a $250,000 deductible, 5% of that $5 million coverage versus their flat all of the peril deductible of $5,000. So it's very important that you know what the percentage equals out to. If that's something that you're comfortable with, that's good. You can also increase those deductibles. It lowers the premium, but really look at that, you know, what you're getting for what you're saving, and think about it after the storm if you're going to be able to come up with that higher deductible amount. Next slide, please. Now, business preparation for our small business owners. Of course, your staff, people first, safety. Your workforce is your biggest asset. It's very important that you build your workforce into your hurricane plan and give them time to leave your business to go home and prep for their families. We've talked about some ways to harden the buildings and how to protect the things inside. But there's one more step with businesses. So as a homeowner, of course, we want to be able to get back into our homes safely. We want our homes up and running again. But businesses are reliant on income to stay in business, to stay, to where they're able to operate and make money. So before you create your plan, there's one more thing that I want to talk about to consider. Go ahead, Summer. And that is your business continuity plan. So you want to have business continuity, which is anything from backing up your data to knowing how you're going to work remotely, looking at your cloud capacity, making sure all of your data, all of your contacts, everything that you basically use to run your business is planned for. You know what to expect in a disaster, where you're going to go, where your employees are going to go, how that's going to work, being able to talk on the phone, having amazing platforms like GoToWebinar or Zoom, which we've seen with COVID. Luckily, we have been able to continue getting education and presentations out there because of platforms like this. But had this not, had we not have access to this, we would have to figure out what the next plan was. Now, there is a coverage on your insurance policy, on your business insurance policy, and it's called business income. And this will pay you for some time that you are not able to have your doors open. So it's very important that you discuss and know what your limits are and know what your needs are. So that way you're covering your risk. Next slide, please. Now, these slides I got from Brian Ellis with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. He is by far the expert on business continuity, and I will give Summer his contact information. He is encouraging you to reach out, and he's got a lot of great tools that you can put a couple of pieces of information into a system, and it actually starts your plan for you. Just a couple of numbers that I thought were interesting. FEMA estimates that almost 40% of small businesses that closed after disaster never reopened because they didn't have that business continuity plan. So you can plan to protect your building and your people, but if you don't know how you're going to do business outside of a building that's damaged, or once you're able to get back, it's going to be very hard to recover. And the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety and U.S. Small Business Administration estimate that 1 in 4 businesses can expect to experience a disruptive disaster. And as you can see, all of our businesses now are facing this exact situation. And so it puts it to the test when you know that you have a backup platform, all of your data is safe and secure, that you're able to kind of pick up right where you left off. Next slide. Right. And again, this is the link here to that disaster planning toolkit. And Brian Ellis with Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council will be expecting your call. I really encourage our small business owners to reach out to him, because it's a very helpful tool to get your businesses up and running again. Thank you so much. Oh, just kidding. We're going to talk about claims. Probably the thing that plagues everybody the most after the storm is going through the claims process, because it can be very frustrating, especially if you don't know what your rights are, what your responsibilities are. So the claims process, especially in a catastrophic claim situation, it works kind of like this. You have outside adjusters that are flown into the state. They're put in a hotel room. They're given a stack of files from the ground to their shoulder, and they're paid by which files they close. So which ones are they going to close, or which ones are they going to do first? The ones they close the quickest, right? To start getting paid on these. So a complete claim, a complete file looks like this. It has pictures, it has maintenance records if you're an association, it has roof installation documentation. It's got everything in there. So let's say, God forbid, if your house is completely flattened, it's going to be very hard to see what was there before. So a picture's worth 1,000 words. You can do it today, spend an hour and a half walking around your house, then it's done. You've got those pictures, and that's something that you can provide to your adjuster, and it really helps your claim process go smooth and much quicker. Temporary repairs, because an insurance policy is a one-way contract where you are responsible to mitigate against further damage, any temporary repairs will probably be covered and most likely okay with the insurance company, because if it's preventing further damage from happening, then that's less money that the insurance company is going to have to pay out and less damage to your home. So do not put yourself in harm's way to do this, but if you are safely able to make these temporary repairs, I definitely encourage you to do so. Again, keeping good records, photos and video and maintenance records, and doing proper property disposal. Do not sign an assignment of benefits. This basically takes you out of the middle of the claim and gives the insurance company and your contractor the ability to negotiate without any approval from you. So please do not sign an assignment of benefits. Do not sign anything you do not understand or agree with, because once you sign it, it's in writing. So you want to make sure, ask as many questions as you need to, get the information you need, so that way your claim process goes smoothly and you're happy with how the results turn out. And I think that wraps me up.
All right, thank you, Jess. That was great information. And just a reminder, if anyone has any questions throughout this webinar, you're welcome to ask them in the questions box or in the comment section of our Facebook Live. And now we have Officer Vu Tran with Largo Police Department. Vu, I think you are on mute.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here on this hurricane preparedness event. I want to go over the basics 101, what expected in law enforcement during the natural disaster crisis situation like this. The role of law enforcement in responding to a disaster is very similar to a day-to-day role of public safety and supporting the community. The things that we do are maintaining overall public safety within the community, and we also help with evacuations, and especially when the emergency order has been issued by the state, the governor, or so on and so forth. And part of our job is to help with evacuations. We also do door-to-door checks if it's come out to that situation, and to provide that security and to get people out of their resident and help FD with the evacuation. Lastly is search and rescue. This is just an overview that we will assist post the storm. So that's some of the basics information. Then I'll go over on each of the bullet in a moment. Next. Next slide, please. So In the state of local emergency situations, our cities will allow the evacuation order. When that taking place, we will go out into the community like we did in the past, where we drive around the mobile home park and make the announcement. So we urge that you watch the local news and stay informed so that you know your zone, so that you can evacuate properly, so there's no delay in that situation. But we will assist in that form. We provide traffic safety, and when we assist with that, the traffic safety, we can use any means that's necessary to provide route for the evacuations route. And in that form would be, barrier, cones, we blocking traffic, blocking lanes, so that the evacuation route can go smoothly if it comes to that situation. Again, we modify the lane uses, the timing signal of the traffic and all that to help the transitions going from evacuations zone to a shelter or to a different area. We also provide the security damage to the area. Now, if there are damages to the area, patrol will go out to provide security in that area. And let's, for example, I'll pick Largo Mall. If Largo Mall is one of the places that have significant impact, we may staff officer there to provide security in that area to prevent the criminals who come in and looting the businesses. The same rules apply to your community, in the sense that if your community got hit really hard and there's a lot of damages to the house, we would go in and have officer control that area, control access, control the evacuation area, so that the looter can come in and steal from your property. In addition to that, the other role that we also take really is to provide security shelter for the shelter in place. And I want to touch base on that in a sense that this is a shelter is not a cruise ship. So please don't bring any things in the sense of like firearm, any explosive device or anything like that. Keep in mind, I also ask that you would bring patients to the shelter. Bring only essential items to the shelter. Again, please do not bring any guns, do not bring any weapons in there, alcohol, or any illegal drugs. I had the privilege to work at the shelter during Irma, and one of the things that I think a lot of the community member is to be kind with each other, because this is a hard time. And with COVID, is still here, so please don't be that person to cause a disturbance. Don't be that person to create problem within the shelters, and that will prompt us to take law enforcement action. And if we need to, we will remove you from the shelter. Lastly is, your home, secure your home, secure your vehicle. All that is very important. Do what the guideline have informed you. Secure your home via, hurricane shutter, board up, and take valuable things out of your home and secure it in a different area. Next, please. Now, post-storm, one of the things that Largo Police Department do is to go out to assess what kind of damage to the area. And our job is then to provide that information to our command posts. And if we need to, we can work along with public work to remove any area of debris, trees, and so on, to provide a security. Search and rescue is one of the important role that we also do. We have what we call is a team response force in a search and rescue incident, where officer will go with a team to provide protection and to help identify the victim who may have passed during this natural disaster incident. we don't want people to think that, you know, the FD or medical personnel or public work doesn't have the protection when they go. We will provide that protection. Protect the community from criminal activity. That's just a basic information. That's just an overall things that we do on our daily, day-to-day practice. But you know, this is just more vigilant. We're going to be out there, more patrol in the area that's had hit with the hurricane, and there's a lot of damage to the area. Secure recovery and of the distribution sites is one of the important role, because I had the privilege to go to the Panhandle during the Hurricane Michael, and they have they utilize a big parking lot for the distribution site, and there will be staff there to provide that security to the staff as well as the community member that go to receive this this help. Next, please. Now, reentry is one of the things that is important. So I encourage you to bring your proper identification, your ID, your driver license. Same thing if it's business owner, but usually this is considered a checkpoint, and for the most part is handled by the sheriff. We probably, you know, will assist with that as well. And one of the things that I want to stress is, like, for example, if a community got really hit hard with the hurricane, and you being the homeowner, you go in, try to retrieve or look what's left of your house, we're probably going to have an officer to ID you to say whether or not you're the homeowner. And what's the best way for us to do that is for you to show us your ID. And you know, I have questions when I do this in the community. People say, well, what if I don't have a Florida ID? Then I said, well, you know, what about your utility bills? If you're one of the snowbird season resident, then you may have some kind of bank statement or utility bills to provide that kind of proof. Same go with business owner. If you're going to have your employees to check on your business, I stress that you give them some form of authorizations so that we know that they are the employee of your businesses. One of the last thing that I want to say about traffic law, we will still going to enforce our traffic laws, but we're going to ask you that during the hurricane and the traffic lights are out, there's flashing red or flashing yellow, please, treat that as a four-way stop sign if it's flashing red, so that you should come to a complete stop and watch your left, your right, before you enter into the intersection. If it's flashing yellow, just slow down, pay attention to oncoming car, see if any other oncoming cars before you proceeded to go through the intersection to avoid any traffic accident. One of the last thing that I want to ask is, please, it's so important that you keep your phone number with you of your family who live outside of Florida, because during Irma, we got a lot of phone calls of families calling, wanting to check on their family members for welfare checks. So I ask that if you're staying in a shelter or a friend, a house of a friend during the evacuation, and once it's over, please call them. Even if it's just simple as a text or an email, or maybe just message them on Facebook to let you know that you are safe, and that so that they don't have to worry about you, and they don't have to call the PD to ask for a welfare check on you. So let's help us to focus on what we need to do during the hurricanes and after the storm. That's all I have, and if you have any questions, I'll be here for the Q&A. So thank you.
Thank you, Officer Tran. All right, up next we have Tony Salvarezza with Duke Energy to discuss electrical safety, generator safety, and power restoration.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Summer. Thank you for allowing me and Duke Energy to participate in this hurricane preparedness seminar. So again, Tony Salvarezza, I'm the general manager for Duke Energy in regional services here in Florida. And today I'm going to just kind of talk about everything that Duke Energy is doing either to prepare for the storm and then what we do during the storm, and then how we get ready and how we prepare and how we restore power. So the sequence of events, the people that go out in the field, and the organization, and the size and the magnitude of things that happen behind the scenes right now as we prepare and plan, and then during the active incident command type setup where we put people on the ground and in the neighborhoods where the damage may occur. So a lot of our customers will reach out to Duke Energy and receive updates, and generally they won't even speak to a customer agent or someone at Duke. They can dial in. When they dial in, they can talk to the computer, and the computer has different prompts that folks can step through. And with those prompts, you can get updates on just about everything associated with your area, your outages, and your current location and power restoration, or ETR, so estimated time to restoration. So we have a lot of that information that's already on our website, and that website is www.duke-energy.com. Then there's a link that takes you to outages for your state, and I would say go on your computer now, bookmark that line, and hopefully you have power. That's our job, right? We want to make sure that your power stays on, unless you're evacuated and you're actually going to disconnect and go away. But if you have a laptop and you take that with you, or a phone where you can log in and look at that stuff, you can go to that www.duke-energy.com and connect and look at outages and look at the outages in the area and actually report outages through the website. So you can report outages, you can view the current outages. We also have an app that you can go on and download that app from Duke Energy and get that information on your phone, on your laptop, and then via a dial-up number. So you can call the 800 number. And that number's on our website as well, as 800-228-8485. So I encourage everybody to bookmark that, write it down, put it in your pocket, put it in your wallet, put it in your purse, wherever you can, and put that in your information. So, next slide. So where does it start? Go to the next slide. I'm sorry. Yep. So I was talking about outage restoration. I forgot to tell Summer to go to the next slide. Let's go to where does it start? So generation. We have to be able to make the power. So in order to deliver the power, we have to make it, and we have power plants stationed throughout the state. Currently have about 12 generating sites with 59 different generators that generate about 10 or 11,000 megawatts during the summertime. And that serves our 1.7 million customers that we currently have here in Florida. So those power plants are stationed throughout the state, all out through our service territory, and they're strategically placed in different areas to supply the load, either for the whole organization through transmission and distribution, or through different switchings and sales and agreements with neighboring utilities to be able to get the power to where it needs to be during a storm or during any given time. So in the recent hurricane that we had, Hurricane Irma, from a generation standpoint, the way it came up through the whole state, and you heard Dennis talk about that earlier, it impacted a large part of our service territory. Believe it or not, it impacted almost every generating site that we had. The good part or the bad part, I mean, that it impacted our entire organization and hit all of our different sites, was even though we had sites that came offline and were not available, we ended up having enough power to serve the customers as we went through restoration. So areas that have underground, naturally those areas are energized and they're very robust, and we're doing our part to harden our energy and harden our grid to make sure that we're improving our response time, improving our reliability, and improving the service to our customers. So after the hurricane passes, we do damage assessments in our power plants. We make sure that they're ready to go and that they can serve the load as the storm passes and it's safe to do so. So next slide. So some of the common outage causes that we see as Duke Energy as a whole. So what are they? So we have vehicle collisions, we have animal contact, we have equipment failures, we have the storms. Naturally, that's one of the big ones that we're talking about here. And then finally, we have trees. So you think about trees. When a tree comes into contact with a power line, it creates a surface to ground, or it creates an issue associated with how we get power to your house. So again, encouraging you to have your areas trimmed back and have those trees reported, so that you say, hey, I have a tree that's touching or approaching or encroaching on a power line. And we do a lot of surveys and we do a lot of tree trimming at Duke Energy, but a lot of times trees will move, via the wind, and you don't really see some of that stuff. So I would encourage you to take that survey now as a customer in our service territory to say, I have some concerns about this tree or this area or this contact. Maybe at least report it out to us and put it out there for a concern, and we'll come out and take a look at it and see if it needs to be done. And naturally, it would have to be trimmed by a professional and make sure that the area is safe. Next slide. So how do we manage our organization when in a storm? We have distribution centers. Again, we go back to where we had power plants. We have distribution control centers, or our DCC, and then our energy control center that controls the flow of power throughout the state. So that flow of power, allows transmission lines, breakers, and dispatch areas to be connected to where the power is needed, and through that control system is how we get the power from the station, from the power plants to the customers that are on our service territory. Our DCC is in charge of where those outages and how we sequence those outages, and folks go out and to do those repairs. So as I talked about earlier, next slide. Okay, so how do we restore power? So there's a sequence of activities that we as Duke Energy go through. So a typical sequence, right? So public safety situations. If someone's in an unsafe situation, down power line, an emergency, we're going to dispatch folks to those areas. I mean, right away when it's safe to do so. You think about that. And so we're in a storm. We naturally can't put people out in bucket trucks. We have wind restrictions. So we hunker down or sequester our groups and our troops as we get out into the areas where they're non-impact to the storm. And we stage those trucks, we stage that equipment, we stage people, food, and all of those areas so that when the storm resides and the conditions are safe, we can get those people to where the storm damage occurred and get restoration in sequence. So public safety situations are a primary focus, and we restore the down power lines and locating them so that there's no danger immediately to public safety. Then our transmission system. So I got to get the power from a power plant out to our system. So we look at the damage assessments in our transmission systems, because even if your neighborhood has a good solid distribution system, if the transmission system cannot get the power to you, you're going to be in the dark, which we don't want that to happen. So we're doing our best to harden our system and make sure that our infrastructure is continually improved and continually robust enough so to provide reliable energy to all of our customers. Then we look at critical and essential facilities. So those are emergency services. And I'm reading because there's a long list of them. I'm not going to read them all, but critical infrastructure, hospitals, law enforcement, fire departments, water treatment. We leverage the counties and we reach out to the counties that we serve. Again, 1.7 million customers, 36 counties across the state. And you can imagine that the magnitude of communication that has to happen through the incident command, through our distribution center, our DCC, our ECC, and our incident command structure that we have. So our distribution lines, we get the largest, and then we'll look at our distribution system and say, where do we get, after all of those other ones are done, where do we get the biggest bang for the buck? Where's the largest restoration of customers that we start with? And then we go on down the line on how we restore power to the different areas in our service territory. Next slide. So outage status communication. What do? We have 24/7 call centers. We have the automated customer service lines that you can log into. I was fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to go and take customer service calls last year. And I can tell you, it's very, very humbling to hear and listen to some of the folks that are in need and take those calls and really understand and listen to what needs to happen so that we can get people restored. It's all about listening. It's all about communication and telling folks and communicating to folks when we're going to get your power back on. And again, go to the website as well. So hopefully if you have a laptop, even if you're at a shelter and you have Wi-Fi and things like that, you can go and look at real-time outage maps. And again, they'll show you down to your street where those outages are and what the ETRs are. Now, it takes us some time to do damage assessments, so those ETRs don't come out right away, but it takes us a little bit of time to build that data, analyze the data, have our damage assessors go out in the field, and then post that information. Either we do it on social media, we put it on our Duke Energy website, we put it on Facebook and Twitter. We have folks that monitor all of our social media pages, and we also have full-time 24/7 customer services. We take our employees from all of our customer service areas, whether they're in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Kentucky, Ohio, and all of them will impact or answer phones for Florida outages should we need that robust background of community and customer service. So we can ramp up and ramp back down depending upon the need. We also have mobile customer service areas that go to areas, and we did some of that during Hurricane Michael up in the Panhandle last year. Next slide. So what do we do from a hurricane preparation? So our customers report outages. Again, they don't speak to a lot of customers, don't speak to a lot of folks, but what do? We do our annual preparedness drills. In order to be good at something, and I'm not sure we really want to be good at hurricane response because we don't want to have hurricanes, but what we do just to make sure that we have our people in play, we have our whole process in play, our hurricane preparedness drills, our incident command structure, our emergency operating center and leaders. We go through a complete structured drill on communication, documentation. Where would the logistics be? We create incidents or mock incidents as to say, what do we have and how do we respond, to make sure that our communication experts and our experts in the field know what to do, when to do it, and where to go. So it's practice and practice and practice, and we continue to do that as an organization. So next slide. This is just a rough, or not a rough, but a high level rendition of our regional incident command structure. So when we have a level 3, and we have different levels of incident command structures. And so this would be a level 3 major, as we call it, and how it escalates up. We have planning chiefs, we have logistics, liaison officers, public information folks, finance, all of the different things. So at the top, region incident commander, safety, right? We have grid officers, we have operations chiefs, and then each zone will have an incident command chief. And those zones are stationed throughout the community when it's safe to enter those areas so that we can get our resources to where the outages are. Next slide. So at Duke, we're doing a lot with our storm plan improvements. We're hardening the infrastructure. You know, we're going from replacing poles when they're damaged or old. And I know that takes time and it takes a lot of effort. And as an organization, we're doing everything that we can to improve our ETRs and look at what our response and response times would be. So the top picture is an area where, you know, we have damage, but at the bottom picture on this slide right here, you can see that we staged, this is maybe a staged website area or site area where we have 1,000 people that are staged with trucks, fuel, food, materials, and ready to go to get on the ground to go out and serve the customer. Next slide. So, and then I'm going to just touch on generator safety. So on generator safety, a couple of things, and I don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to just talk about generator safety from employee safety, both for the Duke Energy employees that may come out and serve the area and do outage restoration. But I also want to talk about personal safety for folks that have generators at their house. If you're fortunate enough to have a generator at your home, we hope you don't have to use it. But if you do and you have one, our recommendation is now, while we're not in a storm, is go out there and test that generator, right? Make sure it runs, make sure you do your monthly test, make sure it's ready to go. It's fueled, the fuel is good, the fuel tank is up and filled, and everything is ready to go. Do it now, don't wait for the storm to come and then scramble to make that stuff happen. So never connect them to electrical outlets in your house. So a portable generator, you should never plug into an electrical outlet. What that does is it takes away your breaker connections in your house, and you could end up with a fault, and that could cause a fire. So follow electrical safety, read the owner's manual, make sure you're not doing something that puts yourself, your home, and your family in jeopardy or in an unsafe condition. Electricity doesn't give you a second chance. It will bite you, it will kill you, and it's a very dangerous situation. So from and those are, you know, standby and household generators. Again, household generators, fixed or stationary, however they may be, make sure that they're ready to go, make sure they're properly grounded, make sure you have the fuel stored in the right place. So if you have gas, you don't want to store it right next to something hot, right next to something flammable. Those are all common sense things, and I'm just going to kind of skip through them. Our biggest concern with generators is backfeeding. So backfeeding, when you plug in a generator, if you don't have a switch that disconnects, And if you haven't had it installed properly by a contractor or a licensed contractor and inspected to make sure that it operates properly and doesn't provide an opportunity for backfeed, we want to make sure that the folks that are out there restoring power, so you energize your house and you have your switch, you could be energizing the power line outside. And if someone's out there working and you flip your switch on and come into play, and you could actually cause that person who's out there working on those lines to get a shock. And that's something that we really take seriously, and we encourage everybody who has a generator to make sure you understand it, read the owner's manual, read this transfer switch properly, make sure that you're operating it within accordance with the design so that no one gets hurt and that your house, yourself, and your family are protected. And I have more, but and again, we'll provide that information for generator safety tips. You can also go to our website. We have all of these things on our website for generator safety. Please go there. Please get familiar with it. And again, Duke Energy is here to serve you. So be prepared and be ready to go when the storm hits. And we'll be there to turn your lights back on. Hopefully they don't go off. But if they do, you can bet we'll have 10, 15, 20,000 people here in the state to try and restore your power. And Summer, with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. That was great information. And just one more tidbit from the fire side, if you have a generator, be sure that you have a carbon monoxide detector, even though your generator is outside, very important as it's a colorless and odorless gas, and you want to have detection for that. All right, Anna Marie Millett, we will now bring her on screen from Pinellas County Consumer Protection, and she's going to talk about price gouging, home repair, and licensed contractors. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? All right.
We can hear you.
Good. I know we're limited on time, so I'll make it quick. Pinellas County Consumer Protection investigates consumer business disputes. So as a consumer, if you have problems with a company you did business with, you can file a complaint with us and we investigate it. We have a couple of main sections that handle our complaints. If you go to the next slide, most of our complaints are civil in nature or can't be proven criminal. So those complaints will go to our dispute resolution. The investigators in this section are certified mediators through the Supreme Court of Florida, and they work with the parties through mediation. So this could be a telephone conference, an in-office conference, or if deemed necessary, we'll go out to the consumer's home to have the mediation there. Of course, during this time of pandemic, we're only doing telephone conferences, but still very successful. It's an alternative to going to court and an opportunity for the parties to reach a satisfactory resolution. Next slide, please. If it is found to be a violation of a consumer protection law, it's going to go to our criminal investigation section. We are housed with the state attorney's office. Summer, if you want to show the next slide. We are housed with the state attorney's office, and we have 2 assistant state attorneys that handle these criminal cases for us. So our investigators will prepare the reports, and then the state attorney's office will handle the prosecution. I've listed some of the typical violations that we see. The 2 in red I'll be talking about in just a few minutes, but that gives you an idea of some of the complaints that we handle. Next slide, please. We also have a regulatory section. So consumer protection is responsible for the licensing of specific establishments and the enforcement of certain county ordinances. And this is to help protect the citizens of Pinellas County. Again, I've listed out the licensing areas and the monitoring, and then the ones in red I'll be speaking about. Next slide. So as you can see in red there, price gouging. And this term is used all the time, but being misused. So price gouging, it's the unlawful use for someone to sell necessary goods or services at higher than normal price during a state of emergency. And that's the key word. I get calls all the time where somebody has made a purchase and they feel they've spent too much money or they were overcharged. That may just be that consumer didn't do their homework in researching to get the best deal. It may be a company that charges higher prices, but the key here with price gouging is during a state of emergency. And so it's going to be for necessary goods. So for a hurricane, that could be plywood for your windows and doors. It could be bottled water. Even with the pandemic, face masks and hand sanitizer. So we're seeing that. If you believe that a business or an individual is price gouging, again, during a state of emergency, you can report that information directly to our office. We ask that you document it. So tell us the location where it is, the brand, the product, what they're selling it at, what exactly is going on. If you could take a picture, that's helpful. If you actually made the purchase, then provide us a copy of your receipt. That'll be extremely helpful. We do work with Florida Attorney General's office, so we will, work with them and share that information. But here locally, Consumer Protection can go out to those locations and we can check it out for ourselves. We can see what's going on. We can also speak to the business owner. So it's extremely helpful. Next slide, please. This is all year long. Organizations asking for donations, but we see an increase usually during the holidays and then after some type of natural disaster. Keep in mind, the important thing here is that all charities soliciting in Florida, with some exceptions, are required to register and file their financial information with Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So I encourage everybody who wants to donate to a charity to go to their website, and I've listed it there, freshfromflorida.com, to check out to make sure, one, that the charity is registered, and two, how much of your donation is actually going to the organization. Keep in mind, all charities are going to have additional costs to operate, but this gives you an understanding that how much of your donation is actually going towards the cause as opposed to other expenses. And you want to make sure that they are registered because, again, after a natural disaster such as a hurricane, sometimes overnight charities will pop up and they're not qualified and they could be scammed. So we want to protect you and your money. Next slide, please. There's going to be a lot of red flags with any of these types of scams. So when somebody some of the things you want to be aware of is if it's an individual versus an organization. There's a lot of organizations that are already established to collect your donations and to distribute properly. So be wary of an individual that's collecting on behalf of an organization. If there's pressure tactics. One thing also to keep in mind is when you are checking out a charity, a lot of times, especially with fraudulent ones, but a lot of times charities in general will have similar sounding names. So you want to be careful of that and make sure that you are choosing the charity that you want or that it is the charity that you think it is, because the names could be very similar. And then we always recommend that if you are going to give, perhaps do it by check. That way you have documentation and always make it out to the organization's name. If you could do next slide, please. The other thing that we see, and again, this is all year round, but we see an increase after a natural disaster, such as a hurricane or any other type of disaster. And you could do all the bullet points if you would, Summer. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the red highlighted areas was home solicitation. And this is if someone is coming to your door unsolicited, you did not invite them, unsolicited, selling a product or service $25 or more. This is a Florida state law that they must have a home solicitation permit, or commonly known as door-to-door sales. Here in Pinellas County, they would get it through the clerk of the court. So again, after a hurricane, you may have damage to your property, and all of us are in a panic. We want our lives to go back to normal as quickly as possible. You may contact an established company or business contractor, and they may say it could be a few weeks or a few months before they can actually get out there to make repairs. Now all of a sudden you have a knock at the door, seems like it's heaven sent. Here's somebody showing up saying they can do the repairs for you and they can do it at a good deal. But again, you haven't had that chance to research them, check them out. If they're unlicensed or uninsured, they may cause more damage to your property. If they get injured on your property, it will be your responsibility if they're uninsured. So again, you can reach out to Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board, and I've listed their phone number, to see if they are registered as a licensed contractor, and then also that they're insured. So it's very important. We always recommend, and I know it's difficult after a hurricane, but at least try to get 3 bids or estimates. That way you can compare apples to apples, make sure that you have all the information included. When you have a contract, you can go to next slide. You want to make sure that it includes all the information. So make sure it has the start date, make sure it has the finish date, all the detailed information. Make sure that you understand it before you sign it, because once you sign it, it is legally binding. One thing to keep in mind with a contract, it may be within it, is what's called assignment of benefits. And this is an agreement that you're releasing your rights or allowing that third party to contact your insurance company directly, and they will deal directly with the insurance company as opposed to you doing that. And you might say, well, that sounds wonderful, and I'm going to definitely sign that paper. But the issue that you have with that is that if you have a problem with that job or that contractor, and there's a dispute, they're not doing the work right, whatever the case may be, you reach out to your insurance company to inform them of the issues and maybe ask them to hold off on payment. They will not communicate with you because you've signed this agreement. You've literally released your rights to speak with the insurance company. So again, understand the contract, make sure everything's included, get those estimates, definitely do your homework. It will save you time and money and heartache down the road. So again, there's several tips, and I know we're limited on time, so I won't go through all of them. If you go to the next slide. But if you go to our website, we have a post-disaster consumer tip brochure, and there it is. I know it's a little challenging to read, but it covers the topics that I just spoke about very briefly. It also includes important resources. So as you can see on the left there, there's some resources if you need additional information. But our website, if you go to the next slide, Summer, our website has wonderful information, not just on post-disaster tips, but also on all kinds of consumer information. So feel free to reach out to us at pinellascounty.org/consumer for this information and more. If you want to speak to an investigator, feel free to give us a call, 727-464-6200, and you can speak with one of our investigators about post-disaster tips or any other information regarding consumer issues, and we can tell you how to file a complaint, or you can do it directly on our website also. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Marie. All right, that was some great information from all of our panelists. Now I'm going to have Eileen Carey join us, and she is going to facilitate any questions that we've received from our viewers.
Hello, thank you all for attending. I am Eileen Carey. I serve as our community engagement specialist at the City of Largo, and I would like to invite up some panelists to answer a few questions as we move forward. So if you would make your video live, we've already got Summer, Mecca, Jess, Tony, Officer Tran, and Anna Marie. And because our panelists were so thorough in presenting their areas, we only have one question I'm going to direct toward Mecca right now. And that question is, do our shelters accept our residents who are undocumented? And if not, what are options for families who are undocumented?
Yes, our shelters accept any person. We are there for safety.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that information with our viewers. Summer, at this time, I don't see any other questions coming in that haven't already been answered.
All right, well, I just want to thank all of our wonderful panelists again, everyone, all of our City of Largo staff from working behind scene to help us make this webinar a success. And thank you, our residents and our viewers, for being here and taking that next step in hurricane preparedness. If you have any other questions that you think of, you're welcome to email us at firerescue@largo.com, and we will have this webinar posted up on largo.com/emergency. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe, and let's hope that we have a quiet rest of our hurricane season. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.